Our second speaker is working on her CC, Competent Communicator, and her speech is to stimulate or inspire. The speech title is How Faith Plays a Part in Our Life. The speech time is 8 to 10 minutes. And from the Advanced Communicator, inspire your audience. Leanne has always believed that faith plays an important part in our lives, and her experiences in her life and her daughter's life have proved this to be true. She is going to tell you an important incident in her life that will inspire you, how the universe is instrumental in our life journey. Welcome, Leanne.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. How many people here in this room feel that faith has played an important part in your life? Raise your hand. I feel the same way. And I'm going to tell you an amazing story on how my daughter met her father through an incident of faith. Her dad and I went to high school together. We're both from Michigan. I was from Detroit. He was from Birmingham, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. And we met when I was 14 years old and he was 14 years old. He was in my homeroom and I thought he was, frankly, the most annoying person I ever met. He was one of those kids that was a troublemaker. He was always partying. He was getting drunk on the weekends. And he would slam my locker shut, throw my books on the ground. I couldn't stand him. Contrasting, I was an A student, I was a cheerleader, kind of annoying, but we're exact opposites. Fast forward 10 years, our high school reunion. I met him there, and he had calmed down a little bit, and I had gotten a little bit wilder. And so we hit it off, and we danced all night, and we had a great time. And he said, you know, we should keep in touch. I'm moving out to Lake Tahoe. I said, well, I live in Miami. And yeah, let's keep in touch. So, and then we discovered that we were born 2 days apart in the same hospital in Detroit. I was born May 2nd, 1950. He was born May 4th, 1950. And we thought, wow, that's a coincidence. So he started writing me, and he invited me out to Lake Tahoe for Christmas. So I said, sure, why not? So I went out there, and we had so much fun. We went skiing, and we went to different Christmas parties. It was great. And then for the next 8 years, we communicated back and forth, and at the same time next year, I'd go out to Lake Tahoe, we'd go skiing, we'd go to Michigan, we'd go camping, or we'd go to Boston where we both had family. And the 8th year, I was working for a radio station in Miami, and we had an incentive promotion called Live It Up in London, and it was for the sales team. And if they met their revenue goals, we would all go to London. And I thought, and we met it, and everybody on the sales team went to London, myself included. So I invited Mark, that's his name, Mark Moore. And I invited him to go with us. And we went, we had a great time in London, and then we went to Scotland, and he played golf. And then we went back to Miami. He went back to Lake Tahoe. And I thought, well, everything's about the same. Not true. I came back with a little souvenir. I was pregnant. So I called him and I said, guess what? I'm pregnant. And he said, ugh. You know, he wasn't really happy about that. He said, well, I don't really want the baby. And I said, well, I do. And so I decided I'm going to have the baby. So I gave birth to my daughter by myself. He did not come in for the childbirth. But he did come in 6 months later to meet my daughter. But he he said, I'm not ready to be a father, and he said, so I'm not going to be involved. So he went back to Lake Tahoe, and of course I was devastated. I was heartbroken, and I was faced with the prospect of having to work full-time and be a single mother. But, I had a beautiful little baby, healthy, and I loved her, and that's all that matters. But it was hard on my daughter, too, because 4 years later, my dad passed away, and she was crying because she said, oh, my daddy died. And I said, honey, it wasn't your daddy, it was my daddy. Your daddy's still alive. She said, he is? She said, where is she? Where is he? And I said, well, he lives in the mountains. And so she was so excited that her dad was alive. So for Father's Day that year, in school, she wrote, my daddy is special because he lives in the mountains. And that's all she knew. And about a year after that, she was crying because she said, Mommy, I don't have a daddy, I don't have a sister, I don't have a brother, I don't even have a cat. So, what's a mother to do? She got her a cat. And she didn't ask about her father for a long time. And then she finally graduated from high school, and she was interested in acting and singing and dance. So she moved to LA and went into acting school. And then when she graduated, she went and she was in a play where she met this wonderful man, Jalen Moore, which coincidentally was the same name as her dad. And then they decided after their third year together that they were going to Italy to celebrate the third anniversary. And this was a fateful trip as well, because he proposed to her on the highest peak in Capri overlooking the Mediterranean. It was a really beautiful proposal, and it was very memorable for her. And after that, they decided to go to Florence, Italy, and that's a very special place for me, because that was my mother's name, and that's my middle name. And they were going to be there October 11, 2010. So 10, 11, 10. And that meant a lot to me because my father died at 1:11 in the morning and on 11/1, and he was born on the 11th. And my mother, when she was passing away, I kept seeing 10:11 on the clock. And my mother died 10 days before her 92nd birthday at 10 o'clock in the morning, and she was born in 1910. So I said to my daughter, something is going to happen in the city of Florence that day. I don't know what it is. And she said, we'll see. Well, she and her fiance now went to this restaurant in Florence, Italy that had been recommended to them, but they were late for the reservation, and the maitre d' said that we only have one table at the back of the restaurant. So they said, that's fine. They sat at the back of the restaurant. There was a young couple there. And they said, hi, what are your names? And they said, well, my name is Galen, and this is my wife, Shayla. And that was funny because her fiance's name was Jalen, and his sister's name was Shala. What are the likelihood of that? And she asked him, well, where are you from? California. Oh, we're from California too. Where in California? Lake Tahoe. And she said, well, that's funny because my dad lives in Lake Tahoe, although I've never met him. And they said, what's his name? And she said, Mark Moore. And they almost fainted because they had worked for her father for 8 years. And that's how they met, in her dad's office. He was a realtor, and they were realtors in his office. And he even came to their wedding. So she told them how she had never met him, and they said, well, we have to make this right. And so they exchanged emails, and they became friends on Facebook. And then, so a year later, my daughter decided it was time to meet her dad. And she contacted Galen and said, I want to meet my dad. So they concocted this whole story. They were going to use her friend's email, Laura, who was her wedding coordinator, and she was going to start emailing Mark because he's a major realtor in Lake Tahoe. And they told him that she had inherited $2 million from her grandfather. Not true. I wish, but not true. And that she wanted to buy a house on the lake. And so he frantically was emailing her different houses on the lake. And they set an appointment to go up to Lake Tahoe. So she told Galen that she was going out there. And he says, you know, I'm not going to be in town that week, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave my car in the Reno airport and leave the keys to the car and the keys to my house in the car. You stay in our house. Mind you, she'd only met him one night in Florence, Italy. But she flew to Reno, and she got in the car, drove to Lake Tahoe, and then she walked across the street to her dad's office. And then the interesting thing was she walked in and said, hi, Mark, and he said, oh, Laura, come in and I'm going to give you different homes to look at. And she blanked out and said, well, I have to tell you, I've been completely truthful to you. And he said, oh, are you working with another realtor? And she says, no, my name isn't Laura. And he says, oh, well, what's your name? And she said, my name is Brittany Sarkisian, and I'm your daughter. And he went, oh, you know, and so he canceled all the appointments. And he said, well, where are you staying? And she's saying, I'm staying at Galen Gifford's house. And she said, you know Galen Gifford? And then she said, yeah, I met him in Florence, Italy. And she told him the story. And then he said, well, how'd you get here? He said, well, I drove Galen's car here. And he said, you drove Galen's car? He gave you his car? He said, you know, you don't have to stay in his house. It's empty. You stay with me. So he has a beautiful house on the lake in Lake Tahoe. And that's how she met her dad. And then she now has a father, and she has two sisters. And my favorite saying is, at the moment of commitment, the universe conspires to assist you. And so that's how she met her father. Thank you.